I've made a hard decision. I have made a serious habit of jamming all World Cup qualifying into one update. Right? Each match day, I do a whole long update. There are so many things I want to talk about in these two segments in this last match day of World Cup qualifying. That hard decision is I'm going to break it into two videos. Okay, this video is going to be Africa and South America because there are so many things that happened. So much drama, so much stuff that leave you on the edge of your seat in those two qualifyings that we're going to hit that, and then we're going to hit Europe and then sprinkle some CONCACAF in there because there's some CONCACAF craziness going on as well. That's going to be in a video that comes out tomorrow. All right, so that we can really hone in and lock in on some of the insanity in the storylines and pull up some more stuff for it. I'm sorry if this breaks your heart. I'm sorry if this ruins your immersion. I'm sorry if this somehow has a detrimental effect on your health in some way. I don't know how that could happen, but it might. I know what kind of importance this has, and that if you're not watching this, then maybe you forget to eat or whatever. If you don't have these to eat to, there will still be two videos that come out. So you'll have something to eat lunch to. Very happy for you. Okay, I think I've got everything pulled up now, so we're ready to dive into this. And we are going to start with Africa because I am pissed. I am pissed that nobody pays attention to African qualifying except for me. And you guys are missing out because it is insane what happens in African qualifying. It's insane. The drama it's peak. It's completely peak. And it starts with the very first match we're looking at, which is Equatorial Guinea at home against Tunisia. Now, I tweeted about this. Which I don't know who does that anymore, right? But Tunisia is a nation that has not produced the types of players that, let's say, Morocco has, Ghana has, Ivory Coast has, even Egypt. Right? Egypt, a team that's missed a ton of World Cups in a row before Salah finally dragged them back recently. They don't produce those types of players. Yeah, they had Wabi Khazri, but Wabi Khazri was more of that like Memo Ochoa type unicorn where he'd show up at the World Cup or AFCON and play well for Tunisia, and then you just forget about him playing mid-table in Ligue 1 in France, right? Tunisia doesn't have those guys. And yet, out of a continent that is so unbelievably difficult to consistently qualify from, and there's so many reasons for that. One, Africa has a very large number of competent teams. More than Asia, more than CONCACAF, not more than Europe, but it's close, right? Like the number of teams that are Equatorial Guinea adjacent, which are good enough to give you a problem, right? They have players in the Spanish leagues, right? They have players that are going to go, they play in AFCONs. They make Equatorial Guinea's made the knockouts at the last two Africa Cup of Nations. This is not a pushover country as much as it sounds like something that ChatGPT came up with when they ran out of guineas, right? There are so many teams like that in Africa. Namibia, Mozambique. These teams that they're good, right? They are good. A great litmus test to be like, how many of these teams would I expect to beat Guatemala? The answer is most. Right? They're dangerous enough that on their day you can lose to them. And the proof is in the pudding with how many teams miss the World Cup out of Africa. Nigeria missed last year. They missed. Algeria missed. Right? Like these teams that have legit star players. Tunisia never misses. With this win against Equatorial Guinea, Tunisia has now clinched its 6th World Cup qualification in 8 years. Its 3rd straight. They are the 2nd team from Africa to have done so. Even if Equatorial Guinea had gotten the 2 wins they deserve instead of the 2 forfeits against Liberia and Namibia that have essentially knocked Equatorial Guinea out, Tunisia would be 6 points ahead of them. They have not conceded a goal in the entire qualifying cycle. There needs to be a study done on how well run the Tunisian FA is. They've got a solid domestic league that uses domestic players. They have an incredible identity. And they are more than the sum of their parts consistently. It is incredible. It's incredible how hard it is to qualify out of Africa. And I didn't even get to all the reasons, right? You have so many decent teams. The travel distances in Africa for qualifying are crazy. from Cape Verde to Comoros is so far. Asia is the only continent that has a bigger travel distance, and that's only when you're getting South Korea against Lebanon, which obviously that doesn't happen all the time. In Africa, tons of travel distance. The field conditions are nuts. I mean, CONCACAF is bad. Africa is notorious, right? African qualifying is notorious for just insane field conditions, crazy road atmospheres. I mean, Libya's over here locking people in the airport, right? Liberia's got people climbing the 10-foot fence to, throw things. Like, it is unimaginable for people that play in Europe and never, it's just a different experience. South America obviously has crazy road atmospheres as well. I'm not trying to short anybody, but all of those things add up to make it so hard to qualify out of Africa. And Tunisia's consistency in doing that, their consistency in delivering that qualification is just, it's incredible. And they did it in dramatic fashion. Of course they did it in dramatic fashion. It was a 94th minute goal. If they didn't score, they wouldn't have qualified for the World Cup yet. Obviously, they'd still be the favorite to qualify. But Bin Ramdane, let me see. I just wanted to see if I could find the goal here, because it's definitely a goal I would like to find. I'm sure it's quite dramatic. There we go. I love the incredibly dejected, deflated sound you get from the Equatorial Guinea crowd after that. Like that was in Equatorial Guinea, and that's just another idea of how impossibly hard it is to play in all these places. I mean, that's the national stadium of Equatorial Guinea, right? The vast majority of us are never going to go there, right? I hear it's lovely, though. But on to the rest of African qualifying. Mozambique beat Botswana 2-0. This is a big win for the team with the AK-47 in their badge. And it sets up what's going to be a very exciting final two matches, because Algeria drew Guinea. All right, that's what's going on in this group. Algeria drew Guinea, which means Guinea took 4 points in 2 matches off of Algeria. Another example of those teams that are just competent, that can take points off really good teams like Algeria. Algeria is a really good team, right? This is a lineup that took the field for Algeria with Riyad Mahrez, Saeed Benrahma, Boudawi, who's he's an FM wonder kid, right? These guys are out there, and they get dropped by Guinea. They can't beat Guinea, right? And Guinea does have Serhou Guirassy up top. Africa's a madhouse. It's the best qualifying in World Cup qualifying. It's not even close. But as a result of Algeria's draw, Uganda and Mozambique are both seeing stars, right? Algeria is probably not going to get caught unless they drop points to Somalia, which is not going to happen, which means they're fighting for second. Second place is a weird spot in Africa, because there are going to be 9 second-place teams. Only the top 4 second-place teams make it into a playoff, and then only one of the teams that finishes second place is going to end up going to the Intercontinental Playoff. But the first step is you got to be a top 4 second-place team, which means Mozambique and Uganda both need to win their next match, and I believe that sets up the super dramatic conclusion, right? Because Mozambique and Uganda both got the wins that they needed to get. They both got the wins they needed to get. The final match is Mozambique-Somalia, which means if Mozambique can beat Guinea, which, again, not easy to do, if Mozambique can beat Guinea, they're going to be in a position to win their 2 final matches. Uganda has Algeria, which means if you're looking at this table, which we are, Mozambique has the driver's seat to finish in the second spot, and they could do it with 21 points, which would likely be good enough to get them into the top 4 and have a chance to battle for an intercontinental playoff spot. That's the situation we're looking at. Uganda is going to need to beat the team they're playing against next, which is Botswana, totally winnable for Uganda. And then they're going to need something special against Algeria, or they're going to need Guinea to beat Mozambique. But Uganda's win was 2-0 over Somalia. That's a business trip well done. And so one of these teams, I would be surprised if one of these teams ended up missing out on a second place spot. See what other groups we can get introduced to. Morocco won. They're already through. They're going to win their group. Their group is all messed up because Republic of Congo had to sit out a few matches. Eritrea is not even playing anymore. There's the Algeria draw with Guinea. Guinea-Bissau beat Djibouti. This does not matter at all, but it'll bring us into a group that does matter. And there was only one match in this group that mattered at all, which was Burkina Faso against Egypt. Burkina Faso needed to win to put any real pressure on Egypt. They did not. It ended in a 0-0 draw, and as a result, Egypt is basically going to the World Cup, which is far from guaranteed for any team in Africa, so you've got to be super happy about that. If you're Egyptian, Burkina Faso has 2 matches remaining. They're next against Sierra Leone. If they win those 2 matches, they will be going to the second-place playoff, so it's still all to play for Burkina Faso to try and actually make it to the World Cup. Speaking of second-place battles, the one in this group is fascinating. Chad has apparently found something. They drew Ghana in their last match to get their first point, and they had the lead at halftime against Madagascar before they gave up a couple of goals and then one real late for Madagascar to kind of turn it around. Madagascar is now sitting in second. That's right. You probably didn't know anything about them or the fact that they had a chance to do anything special at all, but if you followed these videos, you would know. Madagascar is ahead of Mali. They're ahead of a dangerous Comoros team that beat Ghana at AFCON in living memory like 3-4 years ago. And now they've got 2 matches left, and the next one's Comoros. That's the big one. That's the humdinger right there. They have Comoros next. If Comoros wins, they're in second with 18 points. Madagascar's on 16. If Madagascar wins, they're 4 points clear of Comoros, and they have literally solidified second place with 19 points, which would be pretty darn good and would give them a chance to go to that second place playoff here in Africa. Now, Mali is hoping for a draw. If they win both matches, they can get to 18 points. And the good thing for them is that Madagascar's final match, should it be a draw, would be at Mali, which Mali wins their match. They win their next match. Comoros doesn't win their final match. Mali is still alive, but it is a complete pipe dream. And it's likely down to 2 teams. Now, they could catch Ghana, right? But Ghana has Central African Republic coming up next. That is a match they definitely should win. And if Ghana wins that match, it's very unlikely they're going to be caught. Their final match is at home against Comoros. So it is theoretically possible that that gets difficult. I mean, obviously, Comoros, like I said earlier, beat Ghana at AFCON not that long ago. But I would bet Ghana's a better team than they were in that last the AFCON in the last qualifying cycle. They are better than that. They have collected themselves. They are playing like Ghana again. I don't expect them in a final match for World Cup qualification at home against Comoros. I don't expect them to blow that. I just don't. Sue me. Other notable result that happened on this day was Libya against Eswatini. The big 2-0 win for Libya, 2 goals in the first 19 minutes. And this sets up the group that I really, really, really wanted to talk about. Because Libya's alive on this win against Eswatini, but it's the results the next day that we've got to get to. Because Cape Verde, I said it, Cape Verde is playing a match they always lose. Cameroon is playing a match they always win. Well, guess what? Cape Verde won. And the win means that Cape Verde is 4 points clear at the top of this group with 2 matches left to play. Cameroon is only a point ahead of Libya, by the way. If Libya wins its final 2 matches, it would be on 20 points, and it absolutely has a chance to do that, but they have to play Cape Verde next. Cape Verde, of course, is now 1 win away from victory. They play Libya, which there's a chance that could get nerve-wracking. Libya's at home. Libya's notoriously difficult to play in. The problem for everybody involved, and this would include Cameroon, is that Cape Verde's final match is Eswatini. Now, Eswatini's 2 draws are Mauritius and, remarkably, Cameroon. Cape Verde, however, handled them pretty comfortably in their first match. Cape Verde will be at home against Eswatini, and if they win that match, regardless of what happens in Libya, they will be going to their first ever World Cup as a result of their 1-0 win. Now, the sound pop here, I'm going to try and find it for you, is incredible. The goal they scored is a bit of a goofy one. I don't really know what happened to Cameroon's defense, but the crowd, right, it's a turnover in the midfield. This guy basically is just way faster than the Cameroonian defenders, flies by them. Listen to this. That's what it means in Cape Verde. Your country on the verge, if it were, of making it to its first ever World Cup. This is the biggest match in the history of in Cape Verde. One of the biggest in the history of Cameroon, because now they might not be going to the World Cup. They're going to have to slog their way through second place if they're going to get there. Cape Verde's put them in that position. Cape Verde has won 6 of 8 matches. This is spectacular for Cape Verde. It's a disaster for Cameroon. Their next match is against Mauritius. They should be fine. Libya's final match after they play against Cape Verde, which is going to be very difficult, is at Mauritius. So that is winnable for Libya if they're going to try and stay alive, kind of do the unthinkable and knock them out completely. This day of African qualifying was spectacular, by the way. This was the second day of the kind of 2-day window that they play in. This is where the Burkina Faso-Egypt matchup was. It's also where DR Congo against Senegal was. And you look at this final score and you go, wow, Senegal really kind of trudged through that match. They really kind of struggled through it. Yeah, well, DR Congo had a 2-0 lead at halftime. At home. In a match where if DR Congo wins, they are in the same situation as Cape Verde. A nation that's been to the World Cup once when they were named Zaire in 1972. If they win this match, they're 4 points clear with 2 matches to play. Exact same situation as Cape Verde. They're up 2-0 at home, and they blow it. Senegal puts on its African championship hat. Got 1 goal actually right before the half. Nicholas Jackson in the 53rd minute. And then in the 87th minute, it was Pape Matar Sarr that scored. And Senegal, who have been one of the 2 or 3 best teams in Africa over the last decade. They made the knockouts of the World Cup, 3 years ago. Very, very, very good team. Survives Dr. Congo in this match. Now, of course, they are far from safe. They are only 2 points clear with 2 matches left to play in a group that has a couple of teams that could jump up and bite you. Fortunately for Senegal, one of those teams is usually not South Sudan, although South Sudan has drawn half the matches it's played. None of those were against Senegal. I don't believe, anyways. I suppose I should confirm that if I'm just saying it to you. Yeah, no, Senegal beat them 4-0. That's how they started qualifying. So Senegal's final 2 matches are that and then at home against Mauritania. So like I was saying, the good news for them is there are teams in this group that can trip you up. Sudan, Togo. They're not really playing one of them. Mauritania is definitely better than South Sudan. If somebody's going to cause an upset in the apple cart, it would be them. But DR Congo is now staring into the abyss of a second-place finish. And in order to make that count, they are going to need to get results, right? Because it's only the top 4 out of 9 second-place teams. Their matches at Togo, at home against Sudan. If DR Congo wants this, they are going to have to earn it. They are playing the 2 toughest teams not named Senegal in this group. Sudan was at one point on top of this group until the last international window. They've been very good, and Togo has seemingly woken up. They beat Sudan in this window, and DR Congo has to go there in October. It is amazing how much this result has changed. Because if DR Congo wins this match, they just have to win one of those 2. Now, they likely have to get 4 points from those matches to guarantee that they're going to have a second-place spot to continue. And that's a shame because they've had such a brilliant qualifying cycle. Speaking of not brilliant qualifying cycles, Nigeria is out. I can say that with 100% confidence. South Africa draws them 1-1, both goals in the first half, both scored by Nigeria, courtesy of an own goal. This means South Africa is all but headed to the World Cup. They are 3 points clear of Benin with 2 matches to play. Their next match is against Zimbabwe, who is running unceremoniously at the bottom of a group that includes Lesotho. They are being pursued by Benin, and I'll show you the schedules. Benin got a nice 4-0 win over Lesotho to set themselves up. South Africa then plays Rwanda. They are at home against Rwanda. Now, Rwanda is dangerous. They are definitely dangerous. They have the same number of points as Nigeria, for crying out loud. But South Africa needs 4 points from these 2 matches. I would be surprised if they failed to win. I would be really surprised if they lost one of these 2 matches, which is basically what it's going to take for South Africa to not grab that first spot. Benin, the West African nation that has never been to the World Cup, has at Rwanda, at Nigeria. So they're in a tougher position. Rwanda's obviously been good. By no means is it an easy match to go there and win. And then they're going to be at an incredibly pissed off Nigeria. The best hope for Benin would be they're on the road against a deflated Nigeria, a really depressed, angry, sad Nigeria, and then they're able to walk in and beat them. That would be absolutely Benin's best hope. But for Nigeria, they are now on 11 points after 8 matches. Not only the same as Rwanda, 3 points behind Benin. Obviously, they play Benin. Their next match is on the road against Lesotho, a match they should be winning, but given the fact they've won just 2 of 8 matches in this group, absolutely nothing is guaranteed for the once great Super Eagles. But here's the situation. Even if they win their final 2 matches, and if they do, they will likely be ahead of Benin in the table on goal difference because they will have beaten Benin in that final match, right? They win their last 2 matches, they're on 17 points. Well, then they're going to end up looking at the second place table. And I am going to show you the second place table now. See if I can find some creative way to link to it. That was not the creative way to link to it. Here. This is the second place table. There is a second place team on 19. There is a second place team on 16, 16, and 15. There are then 3 more second place teams on 15, and of course Benin is on 14, but you don't have to worry about them, and Tanzania is already out. All you need to get 4 teams over 17 points, which is the max point total from Nigeria, is you need 4 of these 7 teams to win 1 of their final 2 matches. Just 1. And this overlooks the possibility that there are other teams, which there are, that have a point total that could get them into second that could clear this. Just focusing on these teams, 4 of these 7 teams have to win 1 match of their next 2. And Nigeria will find it impossible to get into the top 4 as a second place team if they get to that 17 points. It's just not going to happen. I mean, mathematically, the chances are so low for Nigeria to be depressing that they exist at all. Why can't you just say we're officially eliminated until October? Like, why do we have to go through this extra day of matches and beat Lesotho, hopefully, for their sake, beat Lesotho, just to have somebody turn around and be like, all right, now you are mathematically eliminated? It hasn't happened yet, but it has basically happened. They do have a chance to snake second place, but if they do, they have likely robbed Benin of a chance to finish in second. Benin is probably going to need to get all the way to 20 points if they want to go through. So good luck. They got to win 2 road matches, including at Nigeria. They will have to absolutely earn it. And South Africa is feeling incredibly good about where they're sitting in the table. I already told you Togo beat Sudan. Angola's already out of it. And then this was the last big match. Gabon against Ivory Coast. And it ended unceremoniously 0-0. Pretty even possession, shots, right? It was not a blowout in either direction. A 0-0 draw was likely fair. And as you saw from the second place table, Gabon, whichever one of these teams ends up not getting the automatic spot, will have an automatic ticket basically to being the other second place team there. Gabon's been incredible. They have a loss and a draw against Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast has rather hilariously drawn against Kenya, as well as, of course, drawing against Gabon in their last match. But Ivory Coast is also not conceded. They have been exceptional. And even though they've been exceptional and they have not conceded, they are still just 1 point clear of Gabon with 2 matches left to play. Now, unfortunately for Gabon, Ivory Coast does have a pretty cushy next match. They are in Seychelles, who've been the worst team in Africa in qualifying. Then they're at home against Kenya, which, look, they did draw at Kenya. So maybe there's a chance that Kenya's got some tactical thing figured out where they're able to get a draw in Ivory Coast. If that happens, Gabon is on for a World Cup qualifying spot. They have at the Gambia, which is not easy. That is the best team in this group that's not Gabon or Ivory Coast pretty convincingly. They have not played up to their talent level in qualifying. Then they're at home against Burundi. If Gabon wins at Gambia, they're going to beat Burundi at home. And as long as they do those 2 things, they'll at least keep the pressure on Ivory Coast to deliver a perfect qualifying. They would also get to 25 points in 10 matches and not qualify, which is heartbreaking. That's insane. Gabon's never been to the World Cup. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang's come out of retirement to play this qualifying cycle. One last go with Gabon. And they are playing out of their minds. They deserve to be at the World Cup, to be perfectly honest, with the way they've played in this qualifying, especially if they win these last 2 matches and finish what they've started and win 8 of the 10 matches and beat everybody that's not Ivory Coast in this group multiple times. We've documented how hard that is to do. But they are in a position where it is looking very unlikely they'll be able to do that because they could not find the winning moment. They couldn't find the goal against Ivory Coast. And that's it for African qualifying. That's where we leave it going into the last 2 matches. So there are a few groups where there is a ton of drama left. There are, of course, some groups where there is not a ton of drama left, and some teams that are already wallowing in a pit of despair, like Nigeria, who needed to win against South Africa to give themselves a chance. They did not do it. They are now screwed. That takes us to South America. Now, South America has produced one of the most magic moments that, quite honestly, I've ever seen in football. Okay, you know what the situation was if you watched the previous video. It boiled down to 2 teams. Chile and Peru were out. It was Bolivia and Venezuela battling for the 7th spot. The top 6 were already settled. Right? That's Argentina, that's Ecuador, Uruguay, Brazil, Colombia, Paraguay. Those are the 6 teams. The 7th spot goes to the Intercontinental Playoff, and it was going to be Venezuela or Bolivia. But the problem is, I didn't expect there to be a lot of drama. Bolivia had to beat Brazil for there to be any drama at all. A loss or a draw for Bolivia knocked them out, would have sent Venezuela through. But then this happened. This is the final whistle on top of a mountain in Bolivia as Bolivia's 1-0 victory over Brazil comes to a conclusion.
Permite seguir este partido. Estoy emocionado igual que ustedes. Pida la pelota, Garay, por favor, señores. Estamos en el repechaje. Estamos en el repechaje. Lo logramos. Lo logramos. Volvimos al Mundial.
Unbelievable. They couldn't believe it. I don't believe it. Bolivia had to beat Brazil, but they had one huge advantage. They were at home. Bolivia at home's unkillable. If they played the World Cup at Bolivia's home stadium, Bolivia would win. They beat Brazil in a must-win match and knocked Venezuela out. Now, of course, if Venezuela won, if Venezuela even drew, no, that wouldn't have worked. If they'd won, Venezuela would have kept the spot, which would have been incredibly depressing for Bolivia because you just went and beat Brazil and you still didn't get the spot that you needed. But as you might have figured, that did not happen. As you might have figured, instead, Venezuela lost, and they fumbled this. They had a 1-0 lead. They had a 2-1 lead. It was drawn up 2-2 before the half, and then Colombia, and this is a hated rivalry. These 2 countries are right next to each other. Colombia took then great pleasure in running away from Venezuela in the second half to ruin Venezuela's chances of making it to the World Cup. Venezuela had the lead twice. They had the lead twice, and they let it slip away at home. Venezuela now continues its record as the only South American qualifying team, because Suriname, Guyana, and neither of those countries have been to the World Cup, but they, of course, qualify out of CONCACAF. Venezuela is the only team in this whole qualifying bracket that's never been. Bolivia's been one time. Those are traditionally the 2 terrible teams in South America that have no hope. Well, all of a sudden, they both had hope, and Bolivia's delivered one of the most memorable results in football history. They beat Brazil when they had to go to the World Cup, and Venezuela was just they were the traffic cones standing in the way of that history, to be perfectly honest. Venezuela drops down to 8th. Bolivia goes up to 7th, and they are headed to the Intercontinental Playoff. Bolivia is ranked outside the top 70 in the world. So there's a real possibility Bolivia coming from South America, won't even be a seeded team at the Intercontinental Playoff, which is kind of insane. Shout out to Brazil also. They ended tied in points with Colombia, Uruguay, and Paraguay. Paraguay got the same number of World Cup qualifying points as Brazil. Look, Brazil has a problem. I don't know what that problem is, but they have a problem. Speaking of other teams that have a problem, Ecuador gave up 5 goals in 18 matches, which is psychotic. Insane defensive determination from Ecuador. They failed. I found that, thank you to Football Meets Data for this. This is a little more information on Ecuador, who finished second, by the way. They failed to score in 10 of 18 matches. They averaged 0.78 goals per game. They had 8 0-0 draws out of 18 matches. They had 8 0-0 draws. Obviously never conceded more than 1 goal in a match, and they got 13 clean sheets in 18 matches. They had a 4-0 win, 3 2-1 wins, and 4 1-0 wins. 8 0-0 draws, 2 1-0 losses. Second place in qualifying. Insane. I don't know how you can beat Ecuador. Nobody can score against this dang team, right? Absolutely nobody can score against them. And that was the final bit of insane weirdness that came out of South America. But Venezuela is still not going to the World Cup, and Bolivia has produced an all-time result and performance to keep alive what is a stunning. It's not like they have some golden generation coming through. This is still your daddy's Bolivia, but they're finding a way. It would be a stunning run to the World Cup to give hope to the nation that is just so overlooked in South America. Cool.